It's a chilly Sunday in late autumn at the small town of Castlegar, British Columbia, a short drive from the city of Trail with its giant smelter overlooking the Columbia River, just north of the American border. A crowd has begun to gather at an old movie theater built back in the late 1940s. Some have come out of curiosity, some are there out of a sense of community, and others are guided by the promise of witnessing the replay of a historical event. A few blocks away, a city workers' strike has just started, a reminder that the movie the gathering crowd has come to see is about another strike, one that happened a long time ago. Much history has passed since the Blacklisted movie Salt of the Earth was shown in this same theater 60 years before. Back then, it was a symbol of resistance to the repressive Cold War politics of the era. Anita Torres, a striker and one of the amateur actors in Salt of the Earth, brought the story to Trail's Local 480, a smelter workers' union, in January 1954. A few months later, Salt premiered in New York City and later in Toronto. Audiences were sparse for the banned movie.
How shall I begin my story that has no beginning?
BC's Kootenay region is known for its radical political past and its fighting tradition of trade union activism. So it was no surprise when Local 480 leaders, inspired by Torres, took a stand against McCarthyism. Salt would help them do it. Now, in a darkened theater many decades later, the film that America did everything it could to avoid was on the big screen, as bold and defiant as ever. In the early 1950s, Local 480 learned about the New Mexico strike firsthand when Torres, a member of the Local 890 Ladies Auxiliary, visited Trail and told the story of the strike and the making of the movie. In her late 80s now, she still remembers that visit and she's still promoting the film today.
Well, the reason that I say they should watch it is because this is a struggle that still alive today. Because of that strike, the struggle didn't end. You know, it's still going on.
Accidente.
A health and safety accident led to the strike, a hard-fought 15-month battle at a zinc mine in the early 1950s. Salt depicted a simple love story that vividly showed how exploited Mexican-American families stood together to fight for their rights. But these were not simple times.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many.
Communist witch hunters like Senator Joseph McCarthy spread fear across North America. People with radical views were purged from trade unions, government jobs, political parties, and Hollywood studios.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Are you a member of the Communist Party?
Soon, McCarthy's anti-communist scourge crept north of the border into Canada, where compliant Canadian authorities began to scour the country for left-wing radicals. Bill King, a former Labour minister in the BC government, now retired and living in the Kootenays, remembers those times.
The influence was more philosophical, you know, it wasn't to the extent of the direct persecution that took place in the U.S. There was no un-American or un-Canadian committee. But nevertheless, anyone who was on the progressive side was branded for political reasons as a red, and that scared the hell out of a lot of people.
Where you going, company town? Where you going to today?
In 1954, Local 480 was affiliated to the McCarthy-targeted International Union of Mine, Mill and Smelter Workers. The local's communist leadership often led the resistance to McCarthyism in the area. Workers in Trail were in the forefront as part of a radical trade union culture that had long ago taken root in the region. Those same leaders continued to be harassed by both internal anti-union elements and Trail's anti-communists. Local 480 leader Al King was among those being red-baited. Trail's Local 480 members were also feeling pressure from Canadian authorities to renounce all communists among them. Salt was a way to defy the McCarthyites right here in the Kootenays.
I think they were very much up front about resisting McCarthyism. They didn't shrink away, as I recall it, from their beliefs and their radicalism at all. They suffered from it to some extent, no question, because they were attacked from a number of sides, not only by conservative management elements, but also by elements of the trade union movement who raided them constantly.
There would be no settlement, the company said, till the men returned to their jobs. But the back to work movement didn't work. And so the company recruited a few strikebreakers from out of town.
Challenges like that from company bosses and complicit police were nothing new for the striking members in New Mexico, nor were they new to Local 480. They had fought hard in the 1940s to build their union. They had long been a threat to the power of the smelter owners. And they had supported progressive political candidates like Bert Harridge, the popular longtime member of Parliament for Kootenai West. A friend to the workers of the region, he too was red-baited. As the threat of McCarthyism worsened, Local 480 leaders searched for effective ways to resist the wave of intolerance. The showing of SALT was one of those ways. Selkirk College history professor Duff Sutherland explains how the fear of McCarthyism might have spurred Local 480 on.
You know, part of the reason why they wanted to show the film was they wanted to demonstrate solidarity. They had heard the story from the woman who had come up from New Mexico. But also I think that they had wanted to just push back against the kind of harassment and discrimination that they were experiencing in Canada. And, they experienced a lot in Canada as the leaders of a trade union in Trail and being perceived as radicals.
Union reports of the struggle in New Mexico emboldened Local 480 to show SALT in the Kootenays. Although the Trail Local had not been on strike at that point in its history, the leadership saw the value of showing how a strike could be won if the community, and particularly the women of that community, vigorously supported it.
We have a solution, you have none.
60 years later, SALT's message of solidarity resonated anew with the Castle Theatre audience. Historian Sutherland.
It's a charming, humorous film which is not heavy-handed at all. And, it speaks to a lot of those values that people obviously still believe in.
I saw the film when I was young, and it's stuck with me ever since, and I've been dying to see it again.
In these days when labor history seems to be taking a bit of a back burner, it's great to see him doing this project. Yeah.
In 1954, both Trail theaters refused to show the banned film, but Local 480 was not so easily thwarted by the specter of McCarthyism. It rented the Castle Theatre instead. That December, about 900 people packed into the box-like cinema, paying 70 cents each to see what would become the most controversial movie of the times. Blacklisted, harassed, and jailed, some of the film's creators, including director Herbert Bieberman, were members of the Hollywood 10. They had met the full force of McCarthyism, and they went to jail for their political beliefs. New Mexico Mine Mill Representative Clinton Jenks was also red-baited under the anti-communist Taft-Hartley Act in the U.S. He, too, went to jail. Local 480 supported Jenks and reported on his trial. Anita Torres had told them about the role he had played in making the movie SALT.
This is a democratic union. The decision is up to you.
They came from Sinktown and the hills beyond.
The New Mexico strike went on from October 1950 to the summer of 1952. Violence erupted on the picket line, and the strike was beginning to falter when the women of the Ladies' Auxiliary took the lead. Seeing it today, some viewers drew parallels with the situation facing workers now.
The fights that we have today are not unlike the fights that they had going on back in 1954.
It's an excellent movie, and I think it's as timely a movie today as it was when it was made 60 years ago. The message is important. And I'm also grateful that it's showing here today because it's important not only to chronicle labor history, but to keep it alive. So it's a great afternoon for me.
But why must you say to me, stay in your place? Do you feel better having someone lording you?
Shut up, you're talking crazy.
Whose neck shall I stand on to make me feel superior? And what will I have out of it? I don't want anything lower than I am. I am low enough already.
I want to rise and to push everything up with me as I go.
Will you be still?
And if you can't understand this, you are a fool. Because you can't win this strike without me. You can't win anything without me. That would be the old way. Never try it on me again. Never.
Local historian Takaya Larson has written about women war workers at the Trail smelter. She stressed the strong feminist statement that SALT still carries.
I liked the humanizing of the relationship between the two main characters because it showed the complexity of what I see people going through in the late 40s and early 50s and towards that first wave of feminism when husbands and wives are negotiating that challenge to what they believe is proper gender roles.
Others who attended the 2014 anniversary showing of SALT also recognized the enduring strength of the film's feminist message.
So they had a little taste of what it's like to be a woman. They ran away.
After seeing SALT for the first time, Cheryl McLeod, president of the District Council of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, spoke emotionally about the experience.
I think I've never been as proud to be a woman in labor movement as I am today.
Her words prompted others to comment as well.
I think it was really inspirational, especially with the feminist part of it.
The resolve of the women on the line might have reminded some of the support shown by the women of Local 131 of Trail's Ladies Auxiliary in the 1950s, when Local 480 also felt the sting of McCarthyism.
Relax. But women are getting hurt. We've got to take over. They're doing all right. Anyway, looks like you got your hands full.
Union is our leader, we shall not be moved. The union is our leader, we shall not be moved just like a tree.
After seeing such a confrontation, many viewers focused directly on the message SALT delivered about women's rights.
So it's a combination of a documentary and a drama, and the twist that, you know, from what I've read, the twist about the women being treated like shit while the men are standing up for their rights.
What I got from this movie was a tremendous feeling of solidarity amongst those people and how together they stood and they made a difference.
Many shared those views, but there were also concerns raised about how close we are now to what the SALT workers fought against in the 1950s. As Steelworker District Director Steve Hunt put it,
I hope that we learn from this and don't repeat the mistakes that were made in the 50s, where we persecute people that stand up and fight for their rights, and the rights of others more importantly.
Some viewers drew parallels to the city worker strike down the street from the Castle Theatre. A postal union member was among them, and she called for solidarity.
What I hope after this movie is that every person in this theater today, and every person that we can talk to, will go out on the QP picket line. They're here all week. They've got 2 picket lines. And as Cheryl said so eloquently, they're out there. They need to know that we know that they're there, that we care.
Eviction! En hambre! En la casa de Quintero!
And Goddess works at a women's transition house in Trail. She related to the community role depicted in SALT.
The huge lesson there was the power of solidarity, and I hope they saw that, because really, in many ways, that was one of the most important messages. That if we work together and struggle together, we can make a difference. But you need more than just the people that are engaged in the particular issue. Yeah. You really need the community. Yeah.
We didn't know then that we had won the strike.
After the strike was won, it took 2 years to make the movie. When it was finally released, it was shown in only a few theaters across North America. One of them was at Castlegar. Now SALT is recognized as one of the 100 Hollywood films worth preserving by the U.S. Library of Congress. Anita Torres explains the continued value of SALT.
And this movie, I think, is very good as showing what the union can do when we unite.
Though Those who applauded loudly at the end of the 60th anniversary showing would agree. They couldn't comprehend what all the paranoia was about back in 1954.
Oh, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, people were crying, actually. You know, it was wonderful.
It's an important part of history. Makes an important statement, and it's very relevant today.
Among the viewers at the Castle Theatre that Sunday was Katrina Conroy, a member of the provincial legislature.
The showing 6 decades ago was sponsored by Local 480 of the International Union of Mine, Mill and Smelter Workers. The union, who represented the workers at Kaminko and Trail, felt the story needed to be told, and in spite of the risks, did just that. With this 60th anniversary, the historic film was shown at the same location on November 16th. The United Steelworkers Local 480 was again a sponsor, as were other steelworker unions and locals and progressive people in the area. Except this time, there was no fear of reprisal for either supporting the show or attending.
Then I knew we had won something they could never take away. Something I could leave to my children, and they, the salt of the earth, would inherit it.
Today, when patrons take their seats at the Castle Theatre, they aren't likely to know that they're sitting where once a courageous trade union fought the Cold War with a historic showing of Salt of the Earth.